Reed was halfway through his second bourbon when it happened. I saw it. Every breath in that place stalled, like time had hiccuped just long enough to let something impossible slip through. It was 9:42 p.m. on a Thursday, a half-dead steakhouse, tucked between a burned-out dry cleaner and a florist that hadn't been open since spring. The kind of place no one notices unless they've already lost something. Reed, the CEO, everyone in town tiptoed around pressed suit, quiet temper, steel gray eyes like they've already decided you're stupid, sat there, hunched forward like gravity had changed just for him. And across from him stood a waitress, who shouldn't have mattered. Her apron was frayed. She had a scar under her eye, she never explained. Her name tag, said Lexi, but I doubt that was her name. And then came the question. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, but it stopped everything cold. If you're so smart, her voice didn't even waver. Translate this. She didn't hand him anything. No menu, no note, no foreign phrase scribbled on a napkin. Just this, like the word itself was carrying something she didn't want to touch. Reed blinked, leaned back, smirked in that Wall Street way like he thought it was a joke, like she was just another waitress trying to sound clever in front of someone important. But the second he opened his mouth, he went completely still. Not a breath, not a sound. His jaw slackened, like something inside him had been rewired wrong. And then the lights over their table flickered, not all the lights, just theirs. Just enough to make you question if it was real. Enough to make me question if I'd really heard what I think I heard, a sound, low and drawn out, that came from under the floorboards. He didn't answer her. Couldn't he? Stood up and walked out like something else had taken over. Didn't pay, didn't even look at her. Just vanished into the August night without a word. No one saw him again after that, not his wife, not the shareholders, not even his brother, who owned the private airfield upstate. And Lexi, she kept working the same corner of that restaurant like none of it happened, like the world hadn't tilted sideways on her whisper. People ask what happened to Reed all the time. They say he probably snapped, ran off, faked his death. But that's not the part that gets me. It's what she said after he left. Only I heard it. She looked up at me, eyes hollow, voice low like she'd already forgotten how to speak. She said, "He wasn't the first. Now tell me who taught a waitress to make men like that disappear." And why did her voice sound like someone I buried 10 years ago? Because if you rewind the security tape, you'll see something else no one noticed. Her name tag. It was never pinned on her apron. It was burned into her skin. I didn't sleep. That night, I sat in the car outside the restaurant long after the staff had turned out the lights, watching the empty booth where Reed had sat, still lit by the ghost flicker of a dying security bulb. Lexi didn't come out the front door. Number one did, one by one. The cars left the parking lot, but she never passed me, not on foot, not by car, not through any exit I could see. And yet, the next morning, she was back. Same apron, same dead stare, same scar under the eye that no longer looked like a scar if you squinted hard enough, more like an indentation, like something had once tried to carve her out from the inside and gave up halfway through. I thought about asking her, but something in me knew not to. I should have walked away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and rewound the footage. I work freelance security in stalls, mostly low-tier retail and side-of-the-road family spots. But that steakhouse had hired me to quietly upgrade their camera system after a liquor license scare. That meant I still had access to the backdoor stream. And when I played it back, there it was, Reed, sitting in that booth, Lexi standing across from him, her lips moving just once, and then, nothing. No audio, not even room tone. The system didn't record a single decibel for exactly 9.2 seconds, and then Reed Rose's eyes glazed over, mouth slightly parted like he was being pulled upward by something behind his lungs, and walked out of frame. But here's what made my skin crawl. On the timestamp overlay, those white digits in the corner of the footage, his outline flickered. Just his, as if the camera couldn't decide whether or not he was still part of this world. Frame by frame, he stuttered like a corrupted file, while everything else, the condiments on the table. The waitress's shadow remained sharp and still. I downloaded the file and played it again through my editing software, just to be sure. And that's when the whisper started. At first I thought it was an overlay, some weird artifact from the audio dropout. But it wasn't in the track. It wasn't in the file at all. It was beneath it, playing through the speakers in real time. Even with the volume off, even when I shut the laptop, a voice, female, dry, slow, familiar, it said, "You weren't supposed to see this." The laptop died 5 seconds later. Full charge, gone. I went to unplug it, and that's when I noticed the scorch mark on the charging port. Not a power surge, not heat. It looked etched, like someone had drawn into it with a branding iron. A shape I didn't recognize at first. An upside-down question mark with a slash through the stem. Didn't match the one I'd seen on Lexi's wrist the night Reed vanished. But here's where everything began to slip. When I returned to the restaurant, the next day, the booth was gone. Not empty, gone. Booth number 7 had been replaced with a potted plant and a new section of wall, freshly painted but already peeling. No trace of it ever being there. I asked the manager, a guy named Will, who'd been overseeing late shifts since before the pandemic, and he looked at me like I was drunk. There's never been a booth there, he said, scratching his neck. Lexi doesn't even work nights. That's when the second person showed up. His name was Hank, or at least that's what he said when he knocked on my door at 2:13 a.m. the following Tuesday, holding a manila folder and a face that looked like it had been through 100 more winters than his body. He introduced himself as a private investigator. No badge, no credentials, just a loose claim that he was looking into Reed's disappearance on behalf of someone with connections. His hands shook when he passed me the folder. Inside were 7 printed stills from security footage, not from the steakhouse, but from other locations across the country. A laundromat in Boise, a motel lobby in Fresno, a roadside diner outside Detroit, and in every photo, standing across from someone who looked like they were about to fall apart, was a woman. Same eyes, same scar, sometimes blonde, sometimes dark-haired, sometimes in jeans, sometimes in a nurse's uniform, but always the same hollow stare. "This is her," Hank whispered, eyes scanning the corners of my apartment like something might crawl out. "We don't know what she is." I asked him who he meant by we, but he shook his head and told me not to say his name out loud again, that there were patterns, phrases, recordings that lock things in place. "Ever hear of a pivot word?" he asked. I hadn't. "They're like triggers," he said. "You say the wrong thing to the right person, and something breaks. Or unlocks. And the ones who come after, like her, they're not there to help. They're there to seal it back up." I laughed. I actually laughed. And Hank didn't flinch. He just looked at me with the pity of a man who's already tried to unsee something. That's when I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Did you ever hear what she said?" "The waitress." He nodded, slowly, like every vertebra hurt. "I didn't hear it," he whispered, "but I said it once, and I lost 3 days. Woke up in a room that didn't exist. That should have been the end. Should have been enough to make me cut all cords, wipe the drives, move states. But fear has a strange way of rewinding, especially when you feel it in your teeth. That night, I went through my backup recordings, the mirrored drive I kept for legal safety. Every file from the steakhouse was gone, replaced by one single video, a recording of me sitting in the booth that never existed. Across from Lexi, she doesn't speak in the video. Neither do I. We just stare at each other for 7 minutes. Then I stand and vanish from the frame. I don't remember filming it. I don't remember sitting there. I have never in my life worn the red windbreaker I'm wearing in the footage. But the burn on my wrist right under my watch, where I never looked, matched the upside-down question mark. I showed the video to Hank. He nodded, pulled out a pack of nicotine gum, and said, "Only this. It's not that she makes people disappear. It's that she returns them with pieces missing. And now I can't sleep more than 22 minutes at a time. Every dream ends the same way. A voice on the phone, I can't hang up. It says my name. It says the name of someone I buried years ago. And then it says, translate this. But there's nothing to translate. No words, just a frequency. A low rhythmic static that drills straight behind my eyes. When I wake, my ears bleed. I stop trusting time after that. My phone says it's Wednesday. My calendar says it's Friday. My voicemail says I left a message for someone I've never met, warning them about a waitress with no name tag and no pulse. Hank's gone now. Vanished. The folder disappeared. His name wiped from every email, every call log. The only proof he existed is a voicemail I somehow left on my own phone, in a voice that doesn't sound like mine. She's not just one woman. She's the gap between questions and answers. And every time you say her name, she gets closer. I didn't say her name, but maybe I thought it. And maybe that was enough. Last night, I walked into the steakhouse for the first time since everything went sideways. Booth number 7 was back. Just like before. Same flickering light. Same condiments. And Lexi was waiting for me. Only this time, she wasn't standing. She was sitting in my seat, staring up at me like she knew exactly what I'd lost. And in her hand was my red windbreaker, still warm, still soaked. And on the TV behind the bar, silent as ever, a breaking news banner ran across the screen. Search continues for missing security installer. Last seen at local restaurant, days before mysterious fire. My face on the screen. But here's the part I can't get past. The footage they showed, it's the same as mine. Only in theirs, I never left the booth. And Lexi never moved. Asked ChatGPT. I thought it ended in the diner. That's what I told myself. Anyway, over and over, like a mantra for someone who knew better. Lexi handed me the red windbreaker. I saw my face on the news, and for a brief second, something settled. A full-body stillness, like my mind had clicked into a track it wasn't supposed to know existed, but had always been carved into the floor beneath me. I walked out the front door, under fluorescent lights that never stopped flickering, climbed into a car I didn't remember owning, and drove until the static in my head dimmed to a low hiss. The kind that buzzes just below perception, like you're not supposed to hear it, but it's always been there, waiting for the right kind of silence. I went back to my apartment. Not because I wanted to, but because the streets kept repeating same traffic light, same broken billboard with a child's face half torn by weather, same woman at the bus stop mouthing the same word every time I passed. Forget, that was the word. No sound, just lips, like a broken loop or finger tapping her temple in rhythm with a song I used to know. At home, I found something that shouldn't have been there. A notebook on the floor by my bed, leather-bound, smelled like oil and salt water. My name etched into the corner, crooked and smudged like it had been burned in reverse. Every page was full. My handwriting, my sketches, my notes, diagrams of cameras and circuit layouts I vaguely recognized. But the dates, they were wrong. They started 2 years after today. Each entry was stamped with a future I hadn't lived yet, addresses I hadn't visited, names I didn't remember knowing. But the worst part, every 7th page had the same phrase. If you're so smart, translate this. Each time in a different language. Some known, some that looked like language but weren't. Once it was written in circular glyphs that changed positions every time I blinked. Another time, the sentence was scribbled backwards in what looked like my blood confirmed. When I noticed the scar on my thumb reopening for no reason the moment I turned that page, I thought maybe I was cracking. Sleep deprivation, paranoia. Hank-ass ghost clinging to the corners of my consciousness. Maybe Lexi had never said anything at all, and my brain just needed a villain. So I did what every broken person eventually does when the cracks get too wide. I went looking for closure. It came in the form of a name I shouldn't have remembered. Eleanor Voss. She was a linguist who disappeared from a classified Navy project in 1986. I'd read about her in a forum thread years ago, buried deep in a page about cryptic military transmissions and language systems not meant for human cognition. Most of the replies were garbage, conspiracies, static. One claimed she had been working on a way to weaponize comprehension, that if someone heard a sentence that shouldn't exist, the mind would loop endlessly trying to resolve it, eating itself from the inside like a corrupted algorithm. The thread was deleted 2 days after I bookmarked it, but I remembered the name, and now, suddenly, it was scrawled in the back of the notebook next to a photo I didn't take. A woman, scar under her eye, standing in front of a chalkboard lined with phrases written in dozens of dialects. But in this picture, she wasn't called Lexi. The nameplate on her shirt said, Dr. Voss. I had a lead. I drove out to Baltimore, found the address. Stamped next to one of the later journal entries, an abandoned records building, government seal, half scraped off the front. But inside, it was clean, to clean, like someone had staged it for a documentary that never aired. File cabinets emptied, lights still powered, and one room far in the back, still humming with warmth, like it had just been exited minutes before. On the table, a cassette recorder. Still turning, I pressed play. It was my voice. I think I remember now. It said, low and frayed. It wasn't a woman, it was an event. It wore faces like clothes. Sometimes it looked like Voss. Sometimes like someone we forgot we loved. But it was never her. That's why the words don't make sense. Because it wasn't like was a key and we weren't supposed to have it. A pause. Then another voice. Not mine. Not Lexi's. It was a child's. You asked the wrong question. The tape hissed into nothing, then rewound itself. That's when I noticed the photo pinned to the wall behind me. A black and white print of a classroom. 3rd grade, familiar dot. And there I was dot, standing in the corner, staring straight at the camera. And sitting 2 desks behind me was Lexi, only we were 8 years old. That's when I remembered. Not a moment, not a specific thing, just a feeling of knowing her. Long before the steakhouse, long before I ever took a security job. A sharp, buried knowing that tasted like ice and salt. Like being woken from a nightmare only to realize you never really slept. I got into my car, started the engine, but the radio came on by itself. A voice, garbled but unmistakable. You're not crazy, they lied to you. The station shifted. Static, another voice. A news report from years ago. 1997. A fire at an elementary school. 1 survivor. No body found. Officials baffled. The tape looped, distorted, then broke. I arrived back at my apartment 3 hours later, or maybe 3 minutes, but everything was different. The walls were clean. My furniture was gone, and on the center of the living room floor, my journal was open to a page I never wrote. A drawing of a woman without a face, captioned, memory glitch, do not trust what smiles. I called the police, hung up before they answered. Went to my neighbor's door to ask for help. An old woman answered, never seen her before. She called me by a different name. Said I'd lived there for years. Said I'd stopped speaking to anyone after the fire. I said there hadn't been a fire. She shut the door, but not before whispering, there always is. I slept in my car that night. Didn't dream, just stared at the window of my apartment, where the lights flicked on at 3:12 a.m. and a figure tall, slender, genderless stood behind the curtain, watching, not moving. When I returned the next day, the apartment was gutted, empty, no records I'd ever lived there. I'm writing this from a motel room now, somewhere between Maryland and wherever I'm supposed to go next. I've stopped trusting maps. They repeat. Signs show up twice. Sometimes I hear my own voice ahead of me, in stairwells or gas stations, repeating phrases I haven't said yet. But here's the twist. The thing that resets everything, I found the original footage, the one from the steakhouse, untouched, dated 3 weeks before Reed disappeared. Only in that footage, I was the one sitting in the booth. Lexi never enters the frame, but Reed does. He's the one who whispers something. He's the one who hands me the WINDBREAKER. Then when he walks away, I flicker. I vanish. I was the missing person. This whole time, I've been trying to solve my own disappearance and whatever's been watching. It's not done yet. Because just now, the motel phone rang. No one there, just breathing, and in the silence, a child's voice whispered one last thing before the line went dead. Check your journal. Page 1. I flipped to the first page. One sentence written in clean black ink. If you're so smart, why'd you come back? Everything you just watched, start over. But this time, pay attention to who's missing. They started reaching out the night after I found page 1. Not with words, at least not at first. Symbols appeared drawn into the condensation on my motel mirror before I stepped out of the shower. The same inverted question mark with a slash, now joined by a circle intersected by 3 lines, like an antenna or a broken compass. I wiped it away, thinking maybe I'd drawn it in half sleep, except it was there again the next morning. Same pattern, same angle. But this time, it was carved into the frost on the inside of my car windshield. They knew I was watching, but what shook me wasn't the symbol. It was the note I found tucked under the motel door at 4:03 a.m., slipped in, without sound, without movement, just a torn piece of newspaper from 2004. On one side, a headline that shouldn't have existed. Local man reappears after 9-year disappearance. Claims no time passed on the other. A handwritten message in red ink. You were right, all along, but it doesn't matter. That's when the dreams began. Not mine. I don't know how I knew, but I felt them. Others like me, caught in the loop. Faces blurred by memory, corrosion. Voices like echoes from recordings that were erased and re-recorded over decades. In each dream, we sat in the same room, a white void, empty except for one steel table. No doors, no ceiling, just humming. Always that humming like old fluorescent lights or the inside of a power station right before it blows. Across the table, we passed a notebook. The same notebook I'd found in my apartment, only this one was still being written, and every time it landed in my hands, I saw a new phrase etched into the top of the page in block letters. We were never asked, only used. I woke up sweating, ears ringing, nails torn into my palms. By the third night, I recognized one of them, a woman from the hospital I barely remembered staying at after the fire, one that never officially happened. Her name tag back then had said Tessa, but I never saw her in the ward again. She was the one who whispered to me as I fell asleep under morphine. Don't answer if they ask again. In the dream, she looked directly at me, held up a photo of my face, and said, "They're watching your version." What version? I started combing through the files I had left, hard drives I hadn't touched in months, recordings I didn't even remember starting, hidden folders named in strings of random numbers. When I opened one at random, a video began playing, timestamped exactly 20 years ago to the minute. The footage was of me. Not older, not younger, not different, just me, sitting in a room I've never seen, talking to someone off screen, except every few seconds, the screen glitched, the background changed, and my face flickered just like Reed did before he disappeared. Just like I did in the booth. I scrubbed back and paused the video, and that's when I saw them. Dozens of faces behind the glass, watching, not recorded, reflected, others some, with bandages across their mouths, others with eyes burned black, one with a headset drilled directly into the side of her skull, pulsing like it was alive. All of them mouthing the same thing. This is not your memory. And just like that, it clicked. What I thought was my life, my past, my trauma, it wasn't entirely mine. It had been curated, rearranged, played back for someone else. What they never told us is that memory isn't stored like a library. It's more like a signal, a live broadcast, and someone else has had the remote for years. That's when the third voice came through. Not in my head, not through dreams, but through a tape mailed to the motel. No return address, just a clear cassette labeled in block Sharpie for you, not them. I played it, at first, only static, then breathing, then a voice, not male, not female, measured, older, like someone who's waited a long time for someone to wake up. You think this started in the restaurant? You think the waitress was the first, but you've seen her before. All of them, faces worn like coats. You don't remember, because remembering costs something, but the others do. They've been trying to reach you. Your life isn't a timeline. It's a containment perimeter, and it's breaking. The static surged. Then another voice cut in, one I recognized. My mother's, only she died in 1998. She whispered a word I hadn't heard since childhood, something nonsense she used to say when I was sleepwalking. Cheshire. It meant nothing. At least that's what we were told. But when I typed it into my search bar, one result came back. A thumbnail of a classroom. Third grade. My face in the corner. And a red circle drawn over. Lexi's clicking the link crashed my system. Blue screen. Reboot. Everything gone, except a new folder on my desktop. They never left. Inside were screenshots. Dozens of other people. Not me, not Reed. People in diners, buses, bedrooms, gas stations, all reacting in terror to something just outside the frame. All time-stamped the same exact moment. 9:42 p.m. Thursday. Different years, different cities. Same second, and in the corner of every frame. The same woman. Not always Lexi. Sometimes, an old woman, a child, a man with no eyes, but always the same presence, but watching, revealing just enough to pull the next one in. And suddenly, I knew I wasn't the main character. None of us are. We're just mirrors, screens, versions being viewed, replayed. And something is collecting reactions. That's what the notebook really is. Not a diary, not a guide. It's a script, and we've all been playing our parts, believing we were making choices. But someone else wrote the questions before we could speak. And then silence. For days, nothing happened. No tapes, no dreams, just ringing. Stillness I now understand as the pause between acts. The moment in theater when the lights go dark and the next scene begins to load. And it did. Yesterday, I went to a bookstore trying to find something real: paper, history, facts. In the psychology section, a woman bumped into me. No apology. Just a whisper as she passed. It's not about who they are. It's about who you were before. She dropped something into my hand. A Polaroid. It was me. Only I was in a hospital. Bed tubes, monitors, someone standing at the window looking in. Lexi. No, the face was wrong. The feeling was wrong. This wasn't someone I'd seen. This was someone who had seen me first and written everything since. The back of the photo was smudged, but one word remained. Observer. They've always been here. And if you're reading this, watching this, remembering this, then you were never just a viewer either. You were part of the script. You just forgot. Until now. And the final page of the notebook. It was blank, until I opened it again just now. Now it says, we're watching you watch this, and in the reflection of my screen, I'm not alone.